So my friend who's been playing Infinity for a long time and is no stranger to miniatures games, a player of over 5 years or more, hasn't really been painting minis and recently decided that he would like to. Of course, I asked him why start now. What I noticed was he asked a great painter at our local store, and pretty early on, he was getting advice like, oh, you need to buy different colors of whites. You need to buy a yellow white and a blue white and a white white. And hearing this kind of made me zoom out a little bit like, wow, as mini painters, we are very nuanced, because this is a beginner painter. They've been in the hobby for several years. They've played many games. This person actually helped me learn Infinity, and if they were going to be interested in painting, it would have happened already. Someone who doesn't really have the interest in general, they're finally starting out, and very early on, they're getting that kind of advice before they've even purchased a paint set. So how did we get here as a culture, as a society of miniature painters? How did we get to this spot? Prime, base coat, wash, base coat again, edge highlight, dry brush. Everybody knows these steps. And, don't you think that's kind of interesting? We all know that so well. And when you think about that on the flip side, like, what are some things that we don't immediately think of? Have you ever stopped and thought about, like, what gaps do we have in our knowledge? What learned behaviors do we have as a result of on-ramping into the hobby based on the blueprint laid out for us by the biggest miniatures and miniatures paints developer and supplier in the world, our Lord and Savior, Games Workshop? Now, hold on. Before we move any further, I'm not here to shame you about painting the trad GW way. If you enjoy that, more power to you. And in fact, I do think the traditional Games Workshop on-ramp is very effective, and I would do very little different in the same position. I think it gets a lot of people into the hobby, and I think it's actually overall very net good. But it's very specific and leaves painters with a very specific set of learned behaviors and a very large gaps in their overall painting knowledge. So finally, in this video, that's what we will be discussing, is how the consumerism, the marketing of painting colors our experience as miniature painters. Roll that in. Welcome to Corner Case, the channel for wargamers by wargamers. You're in the hobby corner with me, your host, your Noam Chomsky, and your best friend, Deck. That's right, your baseline experience of painting miniatures is colored in the lines that capitalism drew for you. And as you grow as a painter, there are natural gaps in your knowledge as a result. So what are they? Also, why? I think this whole discussion actually starts with a single question, and that question is, how do you tell people that you have the absolute best miniatures in the world? There's a lot that goes into like the miniatures, like there's the style, the art direction, right? Like, is it grimdark? Is it blah, blah, blah? There's the overall genre. Like, is it sci-fi? Is it fantasy, cartoony, bright colors, dark colors? There's a lot of style, right? So how do you tell someone that yours is better? In a traditional marketing methodology, a quantifiable and provable claim is traditionally the best. If I'm buying golf clubs, then the golf clubs hit the ball the farthest. If I'm buying a loaf of bread, the loaf of bread has the most nutrition possible. Number go up. I'm sure y'all see where this is going already. If you want to have the best miniatures in the world, very easy, number go up. You have the most detail, the highest amount of detail, best miniatures in the world, number go up. So that's like kind of our backdrop. We have to sell these miniatures. We have to say that they're the best. These miniatures exist in the context of an army game, which means that, you're painting like a ton of guys. So you have the component of highest number of details. That means that a single dude can have like 5, maybe 6 unique colors on the single dude. Then you multiply that by like your 10-man squad, and then maybe you got like 3 10-man squads, and all of that equation adds up to you need consistency, so you're not mixing, because if you're painting 30 dudes all the same and you got 6 colors across them, you can't be keeping track of all that mixing. So now you've got all these unique colors for each single guy, and the highest number of details, and they all got to be consistent. And like that's how you end up with the advice: you need to buy a yellow white, and you need to buy a blue white, and you need to buy a white white. And honestly, like I do have all of these colors, and they are a convenience for me, but sometimes I'm lazy and I'll just mix. I paint for Infinity, I paint for Malifaux, and all my dudes don't all gotta be exactly the same. So, that method automatically doesn't really apply to me when I'm not playing an army game. Now, if I was playing like Legion or something and I have like a stack of stormtroopers times 5, or, I'm playing like a separatist army and it's just all the same droid, then absolutely, I care about that consistency. But if I'm painting like each model in Infinity or Malifaux can effectively be a character, then I'm going to paint them uniquely sometimes. And so the consistency matters a lot less. But even if we like back up a little, I remember being in elementary school and all of us being handed art, cheap artist gouaches, and all of us understood that blue plus yellow equals green and red plus blue equals purple. And even just a few years ago, I remember I went to, like an art and a paint and wine date night with my wife, and we painted, and everyone there, even inebriated adults who'd never done art in years, all understood that you mix red and yellow to get orange. So the consumer training of Games Workshop marketing and the echo chamber of the internet miniature painting community is so strong as to overcome what I would consider like kind of a inherent instinct or understanding that people can pick up very quickly and not think too much about, even as children, even as inebriated adults. And these miniature painting specific behaviors get reinforced every time you watch like a YouTube painting tutorial. Now, again, this isn't a bad thing. A good YouTuber is going to think about your user experience, is going to think about what products you may already own or which ones you can very easily acquire, and being able to say buy ice yellow is much easier from a user experience standpoint for both the YouTuber and you than for the YouTuber to tell you mix, 2/3 white and 1/3 yellow. It's just a better user experience to say buy this thing. Now, I know I'm harping a lot on miniature painters not necessarily gravitating to mixing paints as a first solution, but that's only because of the specific issue my buddy had. There are other behaviors that I think are very unique and interesting and not necessarily the best all the time for mini painting. Another one that I think is pretty interesting is, zenithal priming, or zenithal underpainting as it can be called. At some point, this technique kind of wormed its way into the zeitgeist of YouTube painting tutorials, and now everyone and their grandma is adding it as a step to their miniature painting as if it's automatically making their paint jobs better. But to be honest, I think most painters actually don't get the benefit of underpainting. In order to get the benefit of underpainting, you actually need to be a pretty decent painter. ThatMrShy released a video about a year ago, I think, I'll link in the description, discussing the real value and the nuance of why you might use this technique. And I think that's a very important discussion for anyone who wants to get better at painting. And that can mean, at any skill level. And Marco Frisoni released a video about 2 years ago now about using rattle cans. And I think that video is very underrated and underwatched. It only has like 65,000 views. But if you imagine that you are painting a Space Marine army, let's say Ultramarines, and you're going to do an underpainting with 2 primers, a black and a white and a zenithal underpainting, and then you're going to go over it with your contrast Ultramarine blue, that's like still more steps and more money than if you just bought Tamiya blue, $7, and then a light Tamiya blue, another $7. And instead of just underpainting black and white, you just go straight to painting your Tamiya blue and then your Tamiya blue on top, zenithal wise. That actually got your whole army blue way faster and preserved the lighting. So I'm linking that in the description. You know, like the rattle can method is extremely underrated and not talked about. And I feel like there's a little bit of a stigma, but actually I think for most painters, it's a better option. I've been putting my results up on screen over the course of this video to build up to this moment so that like hopefully you guys believe me that like I know what I'm talking about, kind of. I know this isn't like a painting tutorial channel, but I do spend the majority of my hobby painting, and art is my life. So there's no stigma, and I think better results can come from unexpected paths. And I think the learned behavior of zenithal underpainting and then painting over that versus just going straight to blue and actually zenithal painting that rattle can. You know what I'm saying? Like just skip the middleman. Anyway, I made this whole video. I know it got kind of ranty towards the end, but I made this whole video just to say that, you know, open your mind up to different ways of doing things. You know, what are some better ways than the ways that have been taught to you? Painting is fun, and the marketing intends for it. The marketing intends to make it more accessible, and it does. But sometimes that accessibility does come at a cost. So, you know, to the effort of making painting fun and maintaining that accessibility, you know, be open-minded. Think about different ways to do it. And again, lastly, I have no gripe with the GW traditional method. I do still think it is a great on-ramp method. And, you know, I do it sometimes for fun, you know, depending on what I'm painting, sometimes it's appropriate. But, you know, if you only look at that, then sometimes painting can seem a lot harder than it needs to be. So, you know, just think about your needs. Depending on your skills and budget, there is definitely a method to help you get better at painting to whatever style you want within whatever means you have. That being said, thank you everyone for watching this video. If you made it this far, please like and subscribe. Comment your experiences below. What like funny behaviors have you encountered or broken out of, escaped, have been told? Thank you to everyone on the Discord. You know, join the Discord if you would like to, and take us, before I'll see you next time, take us to the money zone. I'd like to extend a big corner case thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon. You are what make this channel possible. And an extended thank you to everyone who supports the channel in non-monetary ways. Building community is absolutely the best part of the hobby. Back to the show.
I am ready to subscribe again.